I'm just looking for that document. Yes. The Department of Education? Yes. Could you get me all the employees of them? And then the Department of Defense Dependent Schools. Oh, a unit of the United States Department of Defense. Well, they're responsible for operating schools from kindergarten through grade 12? Yes. Yes, yes. But they're members of an association. Mhm. For every employee of the Department of Defense that thinks that getting your school sued, yes, does not reflect on you as the employees of the Department of Defense. There's this idea of the document, yes, being a fake document, yes, because of forgery, and imposter, yes, of those that were paid to play the part of Heidi Lee Budnick. Ooch, ooch, ooch. Now they get to go to prison for kidnapping because of the use of the judicial system, yes, to issue court documents that happen to be fraudulent, yes, so that my sons could be kidnapped, and they were kidnapped so as to keep them from me. Now, as a father, for all the allegations of child abuse and domestic violence, where we were on Guam living at the Guam Airport Hotel, yes, and I called my wife a cunt. And and well, those were the exact words, yes, or exact word. And then she said, "Well, he hurt me, but I didn't. I was holding her hand." All of this is because of false arrest on Guam, where every employee of the Department of Defense in each of their schools, right, and then there's the bigger DOD that runs the schools of the Department of Defense, the actual employees. Let's say you're an employee of the Department of Defense and you have knowledge of this. Judge Advocate Generals, yes. The General Judge Advocate of the Navy. The Criminal Investigative Division of the United States Army. Maybe even the National Guard or the Coast Guard, depending on where you're at. Yes, yes, yes. And you thought you could issue false documents, yes, dissolutions of marriage, right, and protection orders, because Homeland Security said that Heidi had to have lookalikes. Yes. What could possibly cause Homeland Security to think that my wife needed to have a lookalike or play the part of herself in court hearings? Why would it be, yes, that my wife was so important that you had to keep me from my sons? Now, that's another kind of a motive. Yes. What was the motive of the federal fucking employees right now? Is there something I don't know about my sons? Something you didn't want to tell me about? This Child Protection Act, yes. I've oftentimes told you about my genetic children that I'm wanting to have live with me. Could be hundreds of them, might even be 1,000 of them. And let's say that, well, certain families, somewhat clannish in Clallam County, thought it was funny using a saint sperm. Poop. Now, for every additional child that happens to be my posterity that I did not give my consent, yes, and I did not acknowledge the use of my sperm without my consent, yes, I would say that they're all covered under the National Child Protection Act. The captain, pow! Now, Sheriff, for every instance of kidnapping, yes, where I informed you, yes, that there was a very, very good possibility my wife did not actually swallow. And you thought, well, we're going to cover all this up and we're going to keep all these little children kidnapped and held hostage so that Paul can adopt them. That would be 20 years for every child. Pouch! Now, let's say you go to prison for multiple life terms. Yes. Now, a life term being a generation, or is that the rest of your life? I mean, if you got hundreds of years in prison right now, I mean, you just want to keep fucking with me? What don't you understand? For every genetic child that you have intentionally kept from me because you did not want to admit that you used my genetics to make little boys and little girls, yes, that is kidnapping. So, see, from the time of conception until, yes, the actual birth, as soon as that little baby was out of that vagina, poach, it's kidnapping. Now, this whole idea that we're going to make children without the adult parents agreeing to it. Yes. And then we're going to use the judicial system to issue fraudulent documents. And then we're going to make up fake false arrests. Yes. And fake crimes. Yes. And then we're going to issue fraudulent mental health evaluations to cover up the bigger crime. Yes. Of the hundreds of little boys and girls. Yes. That happen to have my genetics that are kidnapped right now. Now, when I start to count them up, because I want every one of them, pooch, Sheriff, you can go to prison for multiple life. Do you see the crime? Um, the title of it is this act may be cited as a prosecutorial remedies and other tools to end the exploitation of children today Act of 2003. Yeah, the Protect Act. The tools to end the exploitation of children today Act of 2003. Uh-huh. And the sanctions and offenses. Ooch. Ooh. Oh. Stronger penalties against kidnapping. Oh, two strikes, you're out. Mhm. The attempt liability for international parental kidnapping. Yes. Now, I think there is a significant amount of additional years you could get in prison. Right. For issuing a protection order when we lived on the international, well, it's United States territory, Guam, but it's international waters. If you look at the Parental Kidnapping and Protection Act, yes, and then you were to put this with the International Child Abduction Act, yes, and then you were to add in the Exploitation of Children Today Act of 2003, yes, you might just be getting 4 or 5 life sentences. Mhm. I know I'm unsuccessful. Am I using enough leverage today? You know, as I told Clayton back then, I don't use leverage unless, of course, I need to really leverage the police department in the understanding that you could never get out of prison if you have any knowledge of any child being made from my genetics. And for every child that is made from my genetics, yes, they are all kidnapped and being held hostage because they are not residing with their actual biological father. And for all right now.